Hey everybody, it's Nathan Cool with nathancoolphoto.com, and in this tutorial I wanted to talk about the one-stop exposure rule, something that expands on the last video when I talked about the two-stop rule, and it's something that I really stressed quite a bit in my new ebook, why I like to use those two stops above ambient when I'm doing my flash shot for the flash ambient blend. So there's a lot of good reasons to get rid of that ambient artifact type stuff, but a lot of times you can get by with a one-stop rule, but sometimes it doesn't quite work. One stop though is very common when you use for portraits outside. For instance, take this example. So this is a shot that I did here in the Thousand Oaks area, and all that I did was I exposed for the outside. I took a measurement of what that was, and then I lowered my exposure by one full stop, and then I used my flash power to match what that was. So the subject is actually then one stop brighter than what the background was. In this case, for this particular shot, this was at ISO 100, and I used 1/200th of a second, and the ambient was at f8, so I went to f11 and then flashed, and I was using an Einstein on this, so I had plenty of power to do that. It was in a beauty dish socked, by the way. But anyways, that's just the rule that can be used also in real estate photography. So it's a common thing in photography to say, hey, let's take what we have with ambient and let's just go ahead and reduce it by one stop so we can introduce some other type of light to it and change the subject. For real estate, that doesn't always work, and the reason being is that ambient light can do a lot of crazy stuff. Ambient light will change throughout the day. So when you're representing a house, during the middle of the day, you're going to get a lot more ambient light than we would at the end of the day or at night. So what we try to do is neutralize it, at least I do for my clients. So especially using flash, you get that color, and using the flash ambient blend, which I stress so much in my ebook, is that you then can put in the direction of light and not worry about those ambient artifacts. But my last video with the two stops showed the common method for going forward. I'm going to show you one stop, what that means, two stops, what that means, and three stops. I've got two examples, and in one of those examples I'm going to take through the entire workflow to do the flash ambient blend. So ready to get started? Let's go. So these examples I'm going to be showing you are just taken inside my house. These are just example shots. This is just a little workout room that I have, and it doubles as a loft. Up here you can see some of my artwork up on the wall, and by the way, you can see more of this in my splash gallery if you want to wondering what these bug looking things are on the wall. That's actually ice being thrown into water. But anyways, you can see that in the splash gallery on my website. The important thing here though we're talking about is starting out with an ambient frame. So this is just purely ambient, and you can see that I did my exposure the way that I liked. I talk about in my ebook with being center to right of center here in the histogram. So this particular shot was done at ISO 320. I used f8. A lot of times, you know, I use f6.3. f8 in this case wasn't a very big room, and I was also using a very powerful light in my Explorer 600, so I had no worries as I was going forward with this. But anyways, ISO 320 f8, and then my ambient exposure, 1/10 of a second, my typical starting point. You can see the ambient artifacts coming through. If you look at this far window over here, you can definitely see bloom coming in. So you can see that there's a lot of stuff. Looks like something very angelic almost coming through. And of course, some harsh reflections are showing up on different things around here. And then also up here, when we take a look at the light, you can see, yeah, there's an orange halo around it. These aren't bad ambient artifacts, but they're ambient artifacts. And of course, then down here, because of the sun coming in, this is completely blown out on the floor. So let's go ahead and drop that by one stop. So we were at 1/10 of a second, and let's go to 1/20th of a second. Immediately we see that a lot of those ambient artifacts went away. So that's not too bad. If we were to then introduce some flash, this is what we'd get. So using enough flash here, this was at 1/4 power on an Explorer 600, which by the way is about full power on a typical speed light. You can see that I'm just right of center. I love this. This is actually pretty good, but you can see that I'm still getting some ambient artifacts in here. I've still got a lot of bloom coming in through that window. The reflections are still a little harsh, and we have kind of repaired where the carpet is. That's still quite a bit brighter though. So that was taking one stop down from where we were from ambient. You can see the amount of ambient light that's coming in. So we've got then this flash, and that's getting then a better mix. Now let's take a look at 2 stops down, and this is then what I prefer. Now immediately when I go 2 stops down, you can see a lot of things improve. The bloom is already greatly reduced around that window. There's not nearly as much bloom coming through. I can actually see the window frame. Down on the floor, now I can actually see the color of the carpet. Sure, it's brighter. There's sun coming in. I'm not worried about that. I just don't want it completely blown out. If we go back to our ambient, that was completely blown out. And when we were at 1 stop, it was still pretty high, but now at 2 stops, we're down here. You can also see that I've got up on the histogram very little ambient light coming in. So this is good. There's some, it's just not a lot. So I'm going to introduce the same amount of flash power, and this is what I have. And once again, my flash power, it's dominant, it's just right of center. If I go back to the flash shot that I took at 1 stop, you can see that that's pretty much about the same histogram, but there's some differences. Over here on this far end of the wall, there's some funky color coming in. So in the far corner, there's a little bit of orange. There's also some gray off to the right of that ball. When I get to my 2 stops, since I cut out so much ambient, a lot of that starts going away. So I start getting an even color from the paint that's in there. So I could go even further with that, and I could say let's go ahead and drop that down to 3 stops. Now there's hardly any ambient light coming in at all. I can start seeing my neighbor's house across the street. You can see on the histogram there's really no ambient hardly coming through. That is measuring from hardly anything. Carpet looks good. So when I introduce once again the exact same amount of flash power to it that I did on the other flash shots, once again I'm center right of center. Once again, one of the things that I point out in my ebook, and I've talked about on other videos as well, is that the shutter speed really is for ambient. So when I'm using flash, I'm still going to get the same amount of flash power used because that's more a matter of the ISO and the aperture. And of course the diagrams that I show in my ebook explain that a little bit more. Let's take it another step further and we go down to 4 stops. Now this is really exposing well for the outside. There was a cloudy day, there was no blue sky. But you can see that the window bloom is completely gone basically out of that. The ambient's almost nothing on the histogram. And introducing flash, then this would just be almost pure flash. But once again, I'm centered or right of center. So that's not looking too bad. But that's a lot of ambient that's missing out of there. There's no need to do it. 3 stops looks really nice to be able to do that. And of course, then even just the 2 stops was good, better than if I would have gone to just 1 stop where I've still got a lot of ambient artifacts coming in there. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next example. This would be more what you would be accustomed to seeing on my bedrooms here at the house. And so this is the ambient shot, and you can see where I am. I like it. I'm center, kind of right of center a little bit. But you can see there's tons of ambient artifacts coming in here. Forget about the window. I mean, sure, that could be blown out, but look at up here at the light. That's just a lot of ambient artifact around there. I've got a glowing bulb up there off the ceiling. I've got a lot of orange light. A lot of orange light coming off here doesn't bother me so bad, but it's also some funky stuff going on here on the wall, you know, so it's not really an acceptable deliverable frame, especially as low exposure as it would be in the shadow areas. So if we drop that down even 1 exposure more, we can see that we definitely get rid of some of those ambient artifacts, introduce a little bit of light. So here's our flash power to it. Not bad. We were able to add just enough flash to really light things up. And this would be good for the flash ambient blend, but I still got a lot of ambient artifacts going on. So if I just take it another stop up, immediately I get rid of a lot of ambient artifacts. So if we go to ambient, you can see all the ambient artifacts, especially up here and on the far wall. And then when I go down to 2 stops, a lot of that stuff goes away. If I introduce some flash into that 2 stop, that's not such a bad looking picture to start working with. I'm actually even starting to see my neighbor's house, so in post I'd probably blow that out a little bit. And then of course if I even go down another stop, you can see I'm even getting more. And the flash power, this is at 3 stops, above ambient, so darker than ambient, with just the same amount of flash power introduced to it. So this would be something that I'd feel comfortable with actually working with for the ambient shot for flash ambient, and I'll show you the 2 reasons why. So let's go over to Lightroom. By the way, that was my desktop shot here in Thousand Oaks. So I'm going to go to the ambient shot of the bedroom. That's our shot right here. So I like that. I'm going to add in my typical presets, what I describe also in my ebook. I'm going to go ahead and take that. I'm just going to go with develop settings and copy settings. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to first take my 2 stop shot. which was this one here. So let me go ahead and just apply that there, develop settings and paste settings, so that's good. Okay, now let's take both of those into Lightroom. And once again, just click both of them, right click, and then edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So what we're going to do here is take a look at what the difference would be if I did a flambient with a 2-stop exposure, and one if I did one with a 3-stop exposure. So you can start seeing some of the differences there. So if I were to turn this then into luminosity mode, right, that's my ambient on top, you can see that I still have some color stuff kind of going on up here at the top here around that light. You can see that I've got also a lot of orange that's coming in around there. Over here by the lamp, there's still some weird orange stuff coming in there, some other shadows and stuff, which I've got another video too to show how to fix some of that. So let's take a look at another example here. Let's take our ambient shot, and this time what we'll do is we'll use this with our 3-stop. So this is going to be our 3-stop. I'm going to go ahead and paste the settings there that we used. Okay, and a little bug sometimes happens in Lightroom, you got to do that. And let me go ahead and open both of those, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop, and we're going to see somewhat of a difference now when these two load up. Definitely something a little bit different. So we'll wait for that to load up, and I'm going to take now that ambient layer, I'm going to turn into luminosity mode. Okay. Now let's go ahead and view, right? And do the same with the other one. And now we can go back and forth. Here's 2 stops, here's 3 stops. And if you watch up here on the bulb for the light, and if you look down here, you'll start noticing some things change. So I actually have a little better, little crisper look when I'm using then the ambient that's about 3 stops higher, even 2 stops. So what would have happened if I would have used 1 stop? Well, let's take a look at that also. This was our 1-stop flash shot. So let me go ahead and say develop settings and paste settings on that. And let's go ahead and open him up. Now, you might think that's a deliverable photo. For me, it wouldn't be because it's just too bright here. It actually looks like flash was used. But a lot of times with a 1-stop, you can use just that 1 stop above ambient, add some flash, and boom, you'd have maybe an acceptable photo. So a lot of times that works. But when you do that though, here you've got all these ambient artifacts that are still coming in. So as the picture stood by itself, there's still a lot of ambient artifacts coming in. It looks a little bit blown out, looks a bit flashy. So for me, this wouldn't have been a good room to do a 1-stop. A lot of times bathrooms, especially laundry rooms, small stuff like that, especially if it doesn't have windows or a lot of ambient light, you can get away with it. But let's go ahead and take a look though, if we were to go ahead and use luminosity on this particular one, you can see the big difference. So this is 1-stop, 2-stop gets rid of more of that, and of course then 3 stops gets rid of a lot. In fact, you can see at 3 stops, the light coming off of the lamp looks just like a nice daylight coming off of it. And when we were at 1-stop, that's still a lot of orange because there's still a lot of ambient in there. So it's really up to you. But if I was going to go ahead and take, let's say, the 3-stop, all that I would do is layer mask hide, and then I would zoom out a little bit, take a brush at about 10% flow, and I would just go ahead and brush in some of that ambient. Right, so I actually get some nice looking ambient in there. You've seen me do this before. I detail it a lot in my ebook. Let's get that light. Now see that I bring that light in there? I've got a nice looking color coming in there. Not bad at all. So we add just a little bit of ambient. I also right here like to put something on the bed. That's the focal point. So when I'm doing a flash ambient blend on a bedroom, I like to do that. So anyways, that's what we have now, flash ambient blend. We just go ahead and layer flatten and go ahead and save that. That's going to go right back into Lightroom then. And as it is, I'll go ahead and I'll add a little bit of bump to it out of one of my presets. Bring up the highlights a bit. Maybe bring up the whites, really lighten that. And I might even bring up the exposure just a tad on that. So it's not then a bad looking picture. A little bit more highlights into it. So that's what we have from our flash ambient blend. To review once again, if we had just an ambient shot, this is what we would have had. So definitely a lot of ambient light coming in, artifacts all over the place. If we would have used just the 1-stop, we would have had still some ambient coming in there, definitely some artifacts. The 2-stop then, it got a little bit better. 3-stop, no matter what we did though, we've got then a picture that turns out to be like this, where using about 3 stops in this case, we're able to eliminate a lot of those artifacts. So there's all kinds of times, all kinds of shots where it's going to be 1 stop, 2 stop, or 3 stops above ambient. In fact, there's some rare pictures. Every once in a while I'll take that'll be ambient on an interior. It looks good. I just do some bump to it in some of my presets in Lightroom. So when, especially one of the questions that comes in quite often is like, this must take you forever. Well, once you get used to it, it really doesn't. Also, you don't do this for every single room of the house. It's really just for the showcase stuff that you want to be able to do this. There's no reason on showing a walk-in closet with entire flash ambient blend and worrying about, 2 stops or 3 stops. I would actually do for a walk-in closet, a lot of the bathrooms, laundry rooms. Sometimes I do a single exposure of just that 1 stop rule, not even worrying about flash ambient blend. When you are using a flash ambient blend though, one of the things you're trying to do is get rid of the ambient artifacts. That's why you're using flash. So using just 2 stops above or sometimes 3 stops above ambient will really knock out then those artifacts and give you a cleaner looking picture with the true colors from the paint and other things inside the room. Anyways, I hope this video was useful for you and that you can use some of these techniques in your photography as well. If you did like this video, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. It won't cost you anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and get out there and shoot something.